Welcome everybody. So excited for today. It's going to be awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us. Go ahead and drop where you're at in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. You're tuning in from the East Coast, from the West Coast. Where are you? You on X? Are you on YouTube, Facebook? Let us know. Really excited to be here today with XQ. Got a great show for you guys today. We're going to unpack the mysteries of artificial intelligence in high school transformation and what we mean by that, what we can achieve with AI together with our schools, really transform student learning. I'm going to give it like 30 more seconds here, let more people join us. But yeah, definitely. Thumbs up for AI in the comments, thumbs down or confusion, question mark. Let us know what you think about AI in classrooms. See Irvine, California there in the chat, awesome. Some West Coast individuals joining us. I love this summertime now too, because now when we're doing this out here on the East Coast, it's still bright out. And everyone on the West Coast, it's still bright out. We're not trying to navigate the differences there. Seeing some really awesome familiar faces on here. Welcome everybody. We have a great show for you guys today. It's going to be awesome. Again, I'm Eddie. I'm with XQ. I'm the director of our educator network, helping to storytell our educators across our schools and the great things that they're accomplishing within XQ schools. All right, folks, welcome. We're going to get started here today. Welcome to XQ Live. My name is Edward Montalvo. I'm the director of the Educator Network here at XQ. We are the nation's leading organization dedicated to rethinking high school experiences so that every student graduates ready to succeed in college, career, and life. To learn more about XQ, be sure to visit our website, xqsuperschool.org, and discover more about the work we engage with, the schools and communities we work alongside, and the insights that we're learning from our educators, our school leaders, and the students especially who are making high school transformation a reality where they're at. Today, we're going to focus our conversations around generative AI and education, especially within high schools. I'm really excited to bring our guest onto the show today, Tim Brodsky, educator at Circulos High School, one of the first XQ Super Schools to emerge from our national competition several years ago. Located in Santa Ana, California, Circulos embodies this idea of a circle and that the student and their learning experience is connected to the community around them. So earlier this month, I was fortunate enough to connect with Tim and to learn more about how he's using generative AI within his classroom to help accelerate student voices and their learning experiences. Tim, welcome to the show. Welcome to XQ Live, sir.
Hello. Hi, Eddie. Hi, everybody. How y'all doing?
You guys go ahead and drop your hellos into the chat. Drop some emojis in there. Welcome Tim to the show here. Tim, leading up to the summit, you were recognized as part of the 2024 AI Classroom Innovators Cohort. It was an inaugural cohort of pioneering educators who are set to transform the future of learning with AI. Can you share more about how you achieved such recognition and what you hope to gain with that, with teachers curious about AI technology?
Well, one of the first things I gained was imposter syndrome because it was amazing being included in this inaugural cohort, right? And I think inaugural is one of the things that's the main part. You got to be brave jumping into this world. We were still figuring stuff out in many states, many school districts, schools, teachers, individuals are still figuring out what the heck is going on with AI. So I think that the recognition comes from just being brave enough to jump in here. I'm lucky enough to have a really kind of visionary and supportive school district that kind of let me go play. I think that, and as far as like coming out of it, I really hope that I can speed up the implementation. I think it's absolutely crucial that we're implementing AI for teachers, for students, as fast as we possibly can, because the longer we wait, the longer we delay, I think we're going to exacerbate problems that exist now. But at the same time, AI can close a lot of those problems if we implement them effectively.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. Like I remember in it was like November, December 2022. And that's when ChatGPT first gets released to the public. And so I remember specifically, yeah, it was that article in the Atlantic. It was the high school essay is basically dead. And as a former English teacher, I mean, part of me was like, well, yeah, the high school, the 3.5 essay has been dead for a while now, but we still do this. And just like experimenting with ChatGPT in those first days, just like, yeah, no, this is officially, this is going to take over everything. Like, I know constantly throughout education, we hear like this ed tech is going to move things forward. This ed tech is going to save our problems. Sometimes they've done really well, especially like online learning platforms and learning through social media platforms as well too. But AI, like once that entered into the scene, I didn't question if it was going to change things or if it was going to like do that. I just knew it was a matter of when, like what you're mentioning there. Like this is going to impact everything soon. And like, I mean, what do you think, knowing like where we've been over the past year, where we are now, like as a teacher who's used it, what do you think is like the main thing that you would express to educators who are like, what should I know about generative AI in my classroom?
Nothing, go play. That's what I
Go
have to
punch, yeah.
say. Just go play, because the beauty of AI, the beauty of when you're truly using it, is that it is for you. It's for your needs. The more you contextualize, the more, not you're revealing as far as your personal data, but the
Mm-hmm.
more you're revealing about your context, whether as a teacher, cultural relevancy for your classroom, you got to know your students, knowing where their learning styles are, all of those sorts of things. The more context you feed into it, the more it's going to be personalized and better coming out of it. So really, I think that a lot of folks are apprehensive about jumping in. Oh no, it's another thing to learn. It's today was the last day of school for me, and I can tell you I'm exhausted.
Congrats on a successful
Thank
year,
you.
man. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah. Um, so yeah, it is another thing to learn. Period. That's the reality of it. But don't be intimidated by it, because the beauty of it, and I think teachers actually have a leg up on everybody else,
I
because
agree. Yeah.
there's something about the way that it's not about thinking about what your initial prompt is, right? It's the iteration that's the magic. So, and what we're able to do, because when you're getting something back, most I feel like are just absorbing and be like, okay, that's what I got. That's what I got. Right. But what we as teachers do is we evaluate that for why we got that way. Right. And when you're the prompter, you can go back and, the beauty of a lot of these platforms, you can go back and edit that original thing. You get to revise, and then you can work with it to get closer to what you want, as a whether it's a thought partner. But that piece about, we as teachers we're built to do that. We're built to take
Hmm.
on this, if it was an essay, we'd read the essay, we'd think about our student, we'd think about what they're thinking and how they're thinking, and then we give feedback, right? But imagine being able to jump into the student's head before they even start writing and be like, no, 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 you needed to know this. And
Hmm.
that's what we have the ability to do now. So I think, like, yeah, it's technical. Yeah, it's artificial intelligence and machine. It's all these big intimidating words. Program. Oh my goodness. But now we're programming with English. We're
Hmm.
giving feedback with, or whatever language for that matter, and we're using our words to be able to to get results that we're looking for, right? And I think it's really great that we as teachers, we already do that. That's what we're already doing. So we're kind of built to work with AI. um, yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is it's just like artificial intelligence, and we've talked about this before, like at the AI summit where we were sharing more learnings with folks, is like AI just wants to give you an answer so badly. It's not oftentimes going to be the correct answer, but it's going to be an answer. And so that context that you were talking about there, what your learning outcomes are, the standards that you're trying to deliver for your content, the learning experiences that you would like to provide for your students, the experiences of your students themselves and the worlds that they come from, the people that they are, that kind of context, de-identify it. You cannot have
Of
personal
course.
information in there, but you have to be able to have that context in there to make it work effectively for you. But also, and I think to the point is that AI is not there, especially generative AI, is not there to solve the problem and create a polished product for you. It's there to help you expand your capabilities, your cognitive capabilities, your ability to be productive. It's not the solution that we need, but it is very much a very powerful tool to help you get to the solutions that you want to be delivering to your students. If it's more meaningful and engaged learning, if it is more student voice, if it is the personalized learning pathways, I mean, AI, generative AI, really is going to help deliver that more effectively. You were talking about especially knowing where your students are and the context. And so I just want to like dive straight into the weeds there about scaffolding with AI.
For
Because
sure.
as soon as I saw the tool come out and it started to spit out this essay, like immediately, it was like, this is going to be the best scaffolding device out there. So for you, how do you approach scaffolding with generative AI?
How don't I? So it goes from, I work in Santa Ana as a primarily, Mexican enclave in Southern California. So I'm working with a lot of multilingual students. So being able to produce sentence frames out loud now, right, for
Mm-hmm.
my students that are content specific in the moment, like this is live, right? Like if in the past, if I didn't have sentence frames ready before class, good luck, kiddo, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now I see a student struggle and bam, apply AI directly to the inequity. And so yeah, so like I'm able to quickly address a problem that would take thought. It'd take me walking away from the student. It'd take breaking that moment. But I'm also in that process showing like, hey, you can do this too, right? Like all of a sudden, I think that one of the most intimidating things for a lot of my students is that blank page and that cursor blinking. Not to mention for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to just say like, put 3 words down and hit enter,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives you a paragraph, that page is no longer blank anymore, right? Like no, that's not the point of the exercise, but it's the lift off, right? Let the students
Yeah.
steer the rocket, but sometimes they need a little fuel for that lift off, right? um and so as far as like specifics with, so I teach AP World History, which is a lot of
Which is
writing.
not like the most like it is very dense course material within AP. Scaffolding, it takes a lot of skill and a lot of time and energy to scaffold AP curriculum materials, especially for students who have not been able to experience coursework or material that will help build them up to the level of demand that AP requires typically.
Right. So the rigor. So the one of the beautiful things about Circulos is we get to expose a lot of students to the rigor of AP who normally wouldn't be exposed to that. We
Mm-hmm.
really try to provide as many external supports as we can. We have Avid for all. We have tutoring if students. We're a really small school, small class sizes. Um, I know every single student, whether I have them or not, and being able to say, and our admin and our counselor, if a student's struggling, we don't wait for data to tell us that. We
Mm-hmm.
address it immediately, right? And that sort of speaks to our intuition as teachers, right, as a school. But this brings me back to my point about using AI, right, to scaffold, is that we have that intuition. We see when a student is struggling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we identify that's a moment to learn, and we can give them that help knowing that student. Now, in a perfect world, I have all of my scaffolds individually tailored for every single student ahead of time. But
Yeah.
it's May
That
30th.
Yeah, pre AI world, like that is a bulk of our time. We're spending so much energy and effort trying to understand where students are before the moment and how we're going to meet them at that moment, knowing that there are a lot of variables that could change that interaction as well too.
Precisely, right? So we're able to in the moment address it, like do it live.
Hmm.
And I think that that's incredibly powerful because a lot of times, you know, you've been in that situation. I don't have a scaffold ready for you that you need, and I can try to write one out. But as soon as I start writing it out, you're paying attention to something else, right? So
Yeah.
you're not going to be with me. And so, but if I take out my phone and I verbally say like, "Hey, listen," and we talk it out, right? And
Hmm.
then I And then by talking it out, I can turn my phone around and like, here's your sentence frame, right? Couple of things are happening there. Time is a factor. They're still going to be engaged because they're like, my teacher is using his phone, what? And so that element of it. And then it also, I'm scaffolding like, yeah, your phone's a tool and you need to use it that way when you need help, right? And so because
Exactly.
there's like a lot of real talk. I'm teaching 15-year-olds and I also teach AP macroeconomics, so I'm teaching the seniors as well, so sophomores and seniors. So yeah, it's a lot of my students with that AP, I can't be there for when they're reading like, we don't have time to sit and read the textbook together in class, even though we may need that. Like, these students need scaffolds in the moment when they're struggling with a word, right? And so what's really nice is introducing them to tools, whether it's ChatGPT or even things like Cami, right? That where you can click a word and get a description, right? Or when there's all sorts of different things that we can do, right? And yeah, so being able to like scaffold live in the moment, I think is really powerful because, like you said, we're meeting the student in the moment, regardless of kind of like what's changed. So yeah.
Is there any like insight that you have from scaffolding with or being able to differentiate as well too with generative AI that you found that it actually wasn't really effective for, and that kind of helped you figure out like, well, maybe I can use it this way instead. Have you had any moments like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's I'm experimenting, right? And
Hmm.
anybody that's doing with this is experimenting with, this thing on the other side that's doing things that we may not fully comprehend. I mean, even the engineers building this thing don't fully comprehend what's happening, right?
Yeah.
So, um, so I think that it's I definitely had moments where I've like, okay, I've created this resource and it's not working in the moment because it's not exactly tailored, or I'll get something from it, but there's honestly never been a moment where it hasn't given me a tidbit or a spark to be like, okay, that didn't work. But most of the time when you get the not, you also get the flip side of it too, right?
Hmm.
So I'm like, well, that didn't work. Think for a second. Okay, what would work? This would work. Execute. Right. So that's kind of like the thought partner that it is. Just because it gives you a negative doesn't, your brain is still powerful enough to see, well, why didn't that work? As a teacher, that's what we do. We evaluate,
Exactly.
right? Why didn't that work? And then bam, you got your solution, right? So I think that no matter what, get something out of it. Don't necessarily rely on it wholly, right?
Hmm.
And then the other times that I've run into it and been like, it's been when we're just kind of doing the things that we the rigmarole of teaching, right? But we're just doing
Hmm.
it faster, right? So like kind of repeating the same like boring pedagogies of the past, whether it's just like lecture. I'm not saying lecture. There's no place for lecture,
Hmm.
especially in the AP world. That's blasphemy. But like so, um, so yeah, I think that if we're just using it to kind of repeat the same old things that we've been doing just faster, then that's not necessarily going to be super beneficial.
So that actually brings me to something else that I wanted to talk about was about how AI is like this cognitive capacity expander. Like using generative AI is the same way that a writer, when sitting in a workshop and workshops his stories around with other authors, getting very critical and evaluative feedback. Um, and so I think about that, especially for students, and that generative AI is that extended brain for the individual. If you got a small group of students, you've got them three or four into that group, they've identified their roles for what they're learning. Now you've brought generative AI into there. You've extended their ability to think creatively, especially with good prompt engineering. But we know that isn't a substitute for the work that they do. I'm curious to know, like, within those moments, how you think you can ensure that the student voice, those students that are in the group that are using AI, that their voices, their collective voices or individual voices, still remain the top, and that they're not letting AI replace the authenticity of who they are as students.
Well, I think that kind of comes down to integrity, right?
Hmm.
And teaching students there's an integrity call. And
Yeah.
there have been some like student conferences here in Southern California about AI, and from the things that I've heard from students is we know when to make that call. I know when I'm cheating, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of students in my community, they think using it at all is cheating, right? So it varies
Interesting.
across the board. So, but integrity comes down to, and I have my theories for that, but integrity really comes down to how the teacher's using it responsibly, because nobody's shown them, how to ride a bike. They're going to fall, right? But if we're scaffolding this process, and I think this is a really beautiful moment in education where we can learn with our students. And I think that's so super, super, super important
Yeah.
right now as intelligence, the nature of intelligence changes, right? That we have to invest our students in their own learning. And like that line that we say that we want to build lifelong learners is so much more important in the age of AI, because when something can do the learning for you, you have to find the fundamental exercise of learning important. And it is crucial for us to model how to use it responsibly, right? How to use it to enhance what we're doing, to supercharge our humanity, our humanity instead of replacing it. Because you're right, it can take away from your voice, right? Just this morning, I was talking to our salutatorian, right? And
Hmm.
I asked him, I was just like, all right, how much did you use it? And he was just like, okay, I used it a little bit. And we went in there, and there were some words that were a little verbose, right? And we've those of you that have played with AI, that it's going to throw in words that you're like, okay, stop trying to show off 5-year-old that knows every single word in the dictionary.
Yeah, there's some key terms in there. It's like Grammarly will always try to change the exact same words to the something that you don't want. And that I know that there's like a push, especially with plagiarism with AI, to be able to detect it. But if you're a frequent user of ChatGPT, there is some key verbiage that you can identify and know, like, oh, that's because it's token generation, it's building of language is based off of algorithms, based off of mathematics. And so once you start to understand those patterns and that recognition in there, you can identify, oh, this sounds like AI. Like there is no human uniqueness within this tone, within this style of writing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you on that.
I think the more important one isn't knowing that, having that mindfulness of the AI, but having the mindfulness of your student, right? I know how my student,
Exactly.
right? I know how my students write. I know where their voice is. But imagine the exercise that we as teachers have now.
Hmm.
We don't judge or have to judge our students anymore based on a rubric. Now we're judging, is there enough of your voice in this?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's what we do now. And because if anybody can write an essay in a minute, but it's not them, then who cares? But now we have this challenge, and that question is something that's I'm really thinking about, because
Hmm.
that's the new way of teaching, right? Like, what are we doing if we're not teaching how to write an essay and we're not teaching to a certain standard, right? If we're not
Hmm.
checking boxes, then oh no, what are we doing, right? So I think creating those learning opportunities where students are really, it is more personalized, where students are finding their own individual voices, is more
Yeah.
possible in this age of AI, because of the language scaffolds, right? The student that couldn't write a speech a year ago can now write a beautiful speech so quickly, right? And then get in there and say, okay, I spent 5 minutes with AI. Great. Put the AI away the next hour, which is a classroom management technique. I said, you get 5 minutes with AI. Go. And
Hmm.
then you have to put it away, right? And I will print out their essays, right? Or whatever they've generated, and give them a red pen and said, get to work, make this you, right? So those are like just the basic things where you just have to kind of enforce this kind of sense of integrity, and this sense of learning is important, right? I know exercise is important, but I don't necessarily do it, right? But if we instill how important exercise is, and in this case, I'm
Hmm.
talking about learning, then students are going to want to enhance that in the future, right? We're trying to make, because learning doesn't stop once you get your GED, right? It
Correct. Yeah.
continues, right? And it should. And especially as things are changing rapidly, that's actually a skill that we have to teach now. call it a soft skill or whatever, but it's one of these new skills that being a lifelong learner is super important. And then also like understanding your metacognition, like how you think, right? Before you even talk, how you think. And that's something that I think AI, because that's such a hard way to communicate, AI is creating this opportunity in these chats to really see how a student thinks, right? So something I'll do is like, I'll have them, you can share a chat, right? So I'll have my
Yeah.
students share their chats and I get more understanding about my students from seeing how they're talking to AI than I do from reading the actual essay.
There's a
So
really good moment there too to have that. Not only like, so you have a student that they're engaging with a prompt, they're using ChatGPT to unpack something that they have questions about, or to try to produce something um, that they want to highlight their learning, writing, whatnot, or presentation. That chat, though, exploring that together with the student, and also having students explore that together with each other to understand, when were decisions made? When did we ask a question for clarity? When did we begin to really evaluate what was happening? I think that's very important and crucial. And I think that's like probably something that's like, from what I've gathered in conversations with educators about generative AI, something that is very much like underutilized or not spoken about as much. Like, there's so much concern about the output from it, and
mhm,
yet the input of a student engaging with it, what that learning looks like, is so critical and so important. As AI begins to integrate with our daily lives more frequently and exponentially too, to the point where we blink and then that's it. AI is just going to be everywhere. Having students understand how they're interacting with it and when it changes their perception, their decision making, and adjusts how they're communicating with others, I think that's very crucial. It's a very important thing to be able to help students identify if we want them to be fluent and literate with AI tools and technology. Because it's not just Chat GPT that students are going to be engaging with, or any of the other programs that you're using. I mean, the stuff that you got, that most of the educators are using in the classroom, students are likely not going to continue to use that once they graduate. They'll probably continue to use ChatGPT and and Claude, or the lot, but having that ability to understand what AI looks like in their day to day is going to be vastly important. And if we prevent students from being able to engage or experience that and unpack that as well too, we are just beginning to like create a chasm and a divide between students who have AI fluency and students that do not. And I can guarantee you that if we do not take critical care of this, it's going to begin to splinter, especially along demographic lines, and
yeah.
especially along lines where schools that have access to technology and tools, and schools that do not, and that are struggling to find opportunities for their students. Which, not to unload all that, I would be on a soapbox about
Yeah.
it all day, you and I. But that brings me to, I think, a really key point, which is the cultural relevancy, something that you have taught me a lot about, especially as well too. So I want to unpack that a bit more. How how do you think educators should approach cultural relevancy when using generative AI with their students and in their classroom?
It's got to be there every single time you do it, every step of the way, right? If a lesson is not relevant to your classroom, I mean,
Mhm.
there's the sentence, right? If it's not relevant,
Right?
then it's not authentic. Like, what are you doing? And so I think that when you throw the other word culturally in front of it, most people tend to almost be like, oh, what does that mean? That's scary. But it's not. All it means is know who your students are and what they're into, right? Where their culture is formed from, where their belief processes. And I don't mean religious, I mean just what they exude, how they see the world,
Mhm.
right? The more we can contextualize our lessons for that, the better the lessons are, the more authentic they're going to be, and the more genuine the learning is going to be. So with AI, just by typing in a summary of your students, of your context, and just adding a line, make sure all of the materials that are in this beautiful prompt that you've made are culturally relevant to these students, right? And that's just kind of like a basic thing you can do, right? And it doesn't even have to be a long paragraph, right?
Hmm.
I work in a predominantly Mexican enclave in Southern California. Done, right? Make sure that my lessons are culturally relevant to that. What does that mean? So if if it's going to be creating a character or an example or something, right? It's going to create somebody that they can relate to, that students are going to be able to engage with, right? Or and not can, but want to engage with, right? And so, as far as the cultural relevancy piece, there's, the basic stuff that you can do is say, here's my context, here's the lesson I already have planned, your learning objective and all of those things, right? Or if you just have a Word doc or a PDF of it, feed the whole thing in there. And then just say, like, what are some bullet points to make this more culturally relevant for my community? And then off we go. And is it going to make your lesson magically, culturally, perfectly relevant? No. Right. But what it is going to give you is breadcrumbs. It's going to give
Hmm.
you ways that you're going to be able, as a teacher, not just to see the results from it, but what it was thinking about to get those results. Right. That's that unique piece of being a teacher that I think that we have, that gives us that leg up. So yeah, as far as cultural relevancy, I think that it needs to be there every step of the way. You should be thinking about it. Remove AI out of this conversation. You should be thinking about cultural relevancy all the time.
You're absolutely right. And we had this conversation. So, like, I came from the state of Florida. That's where I was teaching, was in Seminole County. And to to my own own lexicon of teaching for so many years, English language learner was the lexicon. That was
Mm.
how the state oriented it. That was what all of our coursework was. But then even knowing, like, taking a step back and saying, hold on, that automatically creates a deficit in the way that our students are approaching language. Because students from their native countries, from their native backgrounds, they are already becoming proficient in building proficiency in their native languages. Learning English is difficult as it is when that is your primary language, as we have seen, especially in public education. And so we're asking students to double time their efforts here. They're not operating from a deficit, they're operating at an advantage because now they're able to think within two different realities, two different cultures of how languages communicate with each other. And being culturally responsive, to your point, is being able to take a step back and say they are not English language learners, they're multi-language learners. These students are already coming from a history and a background of knowledge and culture that they should be able to use to transfer for learning, to be able to grow as learners and as thinkers. I mean, that is how we build empathy. That is how we build understanding. Is that cultural relevancy? And I appreciate you for like bringing that up to me recently when we were talking. Just like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, it is not just ELLs; it is MLLs, and that is the way that we. That's the easiest way to move forward. And once you
I
have that
think there's
shift in the mindset, oh, go
Mhm.
ahead. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it is a shift in mindset. Just to pick up right where you're leaving off, right? Is it's got to be a shift in mindset, and not just in the cultural part, but in general. I think we have this opportunity in education right now where, as teachers and educators, we can move away from being the judge of our students and their work. That we
Mm-hmm.
are now the ones that make their work better and push them, right? That's what we become. But the problem is in the past, the grading part, right? Grading is
Mm-hmm.
judgment. You did or did not accomplish this, okay, student. And if you didn't, here's a glow and a grow, great, right? We can address the SEL part of it as we're doing it, but that doesn't mean that the relationship that we're building with our students isn't one that is kind of based fundamentally in judging, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience with AI, especially like AI feedback tools, right? So like my personal favorite, and everybody can have their flavor of ice cream, right? But my personal favorite that's been really effective for me is Class Companion. And Class
Mm-hmm.
Companion, working with that and seeing students get frustrated that they're not getting it right, they're not frustrated with me. They're frustrated with the AI. And I get to sit down right there with them at their level and say,
Mm-hmm.
why did the AI say that? Immediately it's a different kind of critical thinking, right? And
Yeah.
I'm in there with them. They're not looking at me and saying, well, why do you think I judged you that way? No, it's why did the AI say those words back to you, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
creates this kind of like new paradigm where we're shifting from this general and then summative judgment of our students, right? Or even formative or summative, to making education about elevating our students as our first priority instead of
Mhm.
producing data that proves that we're doing that, right? I think that there's this opportunity for the shift in the paradigm.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really for, especially for students as educators, like the most important thing that we can do is we can give students access to language and being able to have control over that language so that they're able to articulate not only themselves and their authentic selves, but also the world as they're engaging with it in the world that they want it to be. To get to have that language is liberating for young learners, and being able to do so in a space in which they can do so freely without judgment of like,
Mhm.
is this part of the assessment, but this is where I'm at, and having it as like a shared evaluative space of like, where can I go with this moving forward. I think that's critical. um, and so speaking of the language and stuff, what I've noticed in our conversation here is we've never outright dismissed the capabilities of AI. We've pointed out some of its flaws or its features that don't work well for us, but we haven't actually outright said like this is not going to work. It's an experiment, it's ongoing learning. And so in this next segment, what I'd like for us to do is like let's co-create together.
Let's do
um,
it.
yeah, we got what, like we can do a project or a lesson in like 10 minutes and see what we can
Totally doable.
create. Yeah, we'll do ChatGPT together and we'll get the XQ learner outcomes and competencies in there, and we'll do an interdisciplinary project. Yeah, let's share screens here.
All right, cool. I think there we go. So yeah, we've got the competencies here. With your new competency navigator, which I love.
Hmm. I
So
love the
here's my
colors.
little.
As an educator, it's just I can't get over
Yeah,
like how wonderful the colors are speaking to me.
yeah, I love it. So you know what? I talk a lot about myself. Someone in the audience, tell me what you teach. What are you? I know it's the last day of school, and this is the last thing that you want to do is lesson plan, but let's play around a little bit. Um, so anybody in the audience, what's something that you're into right now?
Yeah, let's see
Subject.
if folks want to add into here. While people add that in there, I would like to frame it around a competency. Um, I don't know,
Yeah,
what do you have any in your classroom that you go to or anything that really speaks out to you? I'm always a big one on fundamental literacies, just and collaboration. I love putting students in groups and getting them to work with each other. It's like my go-to.
sure. So let's do this. Let's do something. Let's do a critical dialogue. I mean,
Okay.
critical dialogue right now, I think is something, right? Um, so let's work on constructive critique, right? So I can copy this rubric, and now I've got context that I'm working with, right?
Hmm.
So, I'm working on a project for eighth grade. Let's do English.
Okay.
Um, I'm working with give me another subject that makes no sense to combine with English. Which should, I mean, everything.
With English, math. Like
Right.
let's just put them right next to each other.
Teacher to co-create an inter this the bravest thing that you can do is spell in front of other people. I was a wow, I didn't even get close. Disciplinary. Close enough. ChatGPT will figure it out. So we're just gonna move on from the typos.
Hmm.
All right. Excuse those. Again, last day of school, everybody. All right. So an interdisciplinary lesson. I'd like to use this rubric. Let's see. So now I can just shift enter. Oh, that's the link.
Hmm.
Let's just copy and paste this text in here. All right. Okay. So what do we want the lesson to be about?
So we've got, what were the two subjects we looked at? English and math?
Math and English.
Math and English. Okay, maybe let's, so I would think in my classroom, I would come at it from a standards point of view, but
Sure.
for
Yeah.
this, we can just look at like a topic too. Like, let's
Yeah.
say in math, they're going to focus on linear equations. Algebra, if it's eighth grade, maybe it's a pre-algebra class. So linear equations. And in English in eighth grade, I'm going to look at arguments, like persuasive writing, like light persuasive writing, knowing that ninth and 10th grade, they've got like a big assessment. They've got to do a lot of like understanding of some rhetoric, argumentative writing a bit there too. So yeah, let's talk about persuasive communication.
All right. So, I mean, like, I could sit here in this first prompt, or I'm like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
got something, send it, see what it gives me, right? This is what I mean by play. So immediately it's spitting something out. It's making something interdisciplinary. Objective, solve linear equations and use these to create persuasive arguments and critiques. They'll practice recognizing and improving clarity of mathematical communication. Fantastic.
Interesting.
Right. And I know AI wrote that just by the way it sounds, right?
Right.
So, so y equals mx plus b. So linear equations. Okay, group activity. What are we doing here? So part 2. So it's separating out these parts, right? Is that what we want, or do
Mm-hmm.
we want to make it more interdisciplinary?
I would think we want to make it more interdisciplinary. I think also at the same time, like, can we elevate this to a project? Knowing
Yes.
that, we could probably get something quickly done in 50 minutes, like a 50-minute session in math, 50-minute session in English. But like to really make the students feel like their learning is connected into the outside, can we get the chat GPT to help us develop some project ideas?
Sure. So let's elevate this to be a 4 to 6 week project. 5 60-minute class periods. I mean, this prompting isn't like masterful prompting either. I'm just showing.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to show folks that haven't necessarily jumped in full speed yet that you
Mm-hmm.
can do a lot with it and get things from it that are going to be really powerful for you just as a thought partner. It's 5 60-minute class periods, working with mostly, let's throw in the cultural relevancy piece, Spanish speaking multilingual learners. Okay, focus the project on murals in the community.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
a
I mean,
great project idea because now you can get in geometry,
yeah, linear
communication
equations
through
or
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it may change it and be like, well, maybe like murals aren't like perfect for linear equations. Great. Now you can change what standard you're going to do, right? So that's that thought partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just see what happens, you know?
Unless your mural is a linear equation,
Yes. But that requires you going out there and
right?
world. So here we go. And it's giving us a week by week breakdown. And obviously, we don't have time to read
Mm-hmm.
all of this, right? Solve linear equations and apply their understanding to create persuasive arguments and critiques. Okay, so it's just kind of repeating the words back to us. Not
Yeah.
necessarily great, right? So here's the project. And it's just again repeating all of this. Significance of murals in the community. So now we're doing, culture, and you can write off of that. Project goals. So provide a few examples, linear equations, emphasize the importance. Where do we get? Okay, so field trip and data collection. So we take measurements of the murals, right? Take
Mm-hmm.
notes and discuss their cultural significance. And I'm reading through this and I'm like, all right, great, ChatGPT, but I've got ideas, right? We're
Yeah.
going to measure them and then talk about how the different sizes of different murals affects how we interpret them and the meaning that we get from them, right? So how does a giant mural versus just a small one, how does that make us feel? And now we're writing, right? So now
I
we're
think you
using
could, yeah, you could also look at like where is the mural and using mathematical modeling, figure out how much traffic could we expect in this area, who drives by it, what kind of communities interact with this, which I think can then allow students to consider and be creative about the message that they want that mural to focus on. What do we want to communicate to the people that will have significance and importance, knowing that it's going to be there day to day? And is there something
exactly.
that we can actually do with it, productive for the community?
Yeah, and these are great ideas, and these are ideas that we as teachers, let's not forget, we have to have fun, right? That we want to
Yeah.
have to, we're going to be the ones teaching it, and we want to teach these lessons. So being able to say, okay, how much time have we spent with ChatGPT, right? Like interacting with it, we've maybe spent 30 seconds, right?
Hmm.
But we went from 3 minutes ago, oh my God, math and ELA, how am I going to do this, to we're going to go out in the community, measure murals. We're going to make it culturally relevant. We're going to go out there and talk about how size affects art and proportion. And we didn't have that 3 minutes ago, but we have that
Yeah.
now. Is it a lesson? No. But now you and I are sitting here, and for the next 5-10 minutes, and the speed at which we got to where we are here was so fast, right?
Hmm.
So this is that thought partner exercise. This is what I mean by go play. And be really, really, I was talking about non-judgmental of your students earlier. Oh, you're allowed to be so judgmental of AI,
Exactly.
right? So you can rip into it. You can be mean, vent. Oh, it's a great place to just like make a student that's been doing this and how do I classroom manage this, and then just like
Hmm.
vent. I've done that before.
Yeah,
Um,
this is not how the supercomputer, like this had, there's no sentience attached to this at all. It is just going, it's like we've talked about before, it really wants to give you an answer and it will do whatever it needs to. It's not going to be the right answer, but it will be answer. So,
yeah, exactly. So I think that it's just kind of going through this exercise and realizing what do I get out of it, because it's
mhm.
really easy to look at it and be like, eh, what it spit out at me is not great for this reason, this reason, this reason, and this reason. Okay, so what would you give a student as far as feedback? Type it in there, and you don't have to wait for that student to make a revision. It's done in front of you, right? And so I think it's a really amazing process. Like, is it going to give you everything? Not necessarily, right? But look, maybe I would have forgotten to think about all of those things, right?
Hmm.
So now I remember. So it's an aid to help me be a better teacher. It helps me be faster. It gives me ideas. It's really that thought partner. So is it the end all be all? Can it create the product for you that I'm going to copy and paste out of it? Sure, but that's not
Hmm.
ethical. That's not me. That's not who I am. And that's not what I want to model to my students. Right. So I think that it's really, an amazing tool to elevate our humanity, to kind of bring this around full circle, right? That it's not going to replace us. And if it does
Hmm.
replace us, that is truly, 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 truly tragic, right? Because the act of going places wasn't replaced by cars, right?
Exactly.
And so being able to go different places with our intelligence now, just because we can do it faster, that hasn't gone away. That
Hmm.
fundamental, I want to learn and expand my knowledge and expand my intellect and give me tools to do more good in my community, that hasn't gone away. But we have this groundswell of support now that's individualized, tailored to our students, and that they can create for themselves, right?
Hmm.
That is really powerful. That's going to be enhancing kind of everything that we do.
Yeah, and I want to underscore the point that you made there too, as well, in that AI is not going to replace teachers, generative AI. And I've seen a couple of bits out there, a couple of hot takes on it that, generative AI is going to take over teaching. And that's the furthest from reality. Because as we've pointed out within this as well, too, is like, yeah, it's going to spit out this really cool lesson plan, but there's no humanity to bring it to life. Um, and even still, even if there was some capacity for that information to then be transplanted and come to life, we as educators have the expertise in the most fundamental thing when it comes to education, and that is understanding students and learning and understanding where we need to be to service their needs, to make sure that the material that they're engaging with, that they're able to understand it, and that we are able to give them the tools and resources needed for them to be able to understand it throughout their own means. AI will never be able to generate that independently or to be able to do it on its own. You need the value and the expertise of educators to be able to discern that. Because also, and like I don't think we've really talked about this much, and maybe this is the next episode that we do together, but the student experience. We've been
Yeah.
talking so much about educators and how we're using these tools that we haven't really even dived into the student experience. And like at some point, say you want to go down that rabbit hole of like AI replacing the teaching capacity, the teaching experience. What about the students? At what point will they become burnt out? Will they become disengaged? I've seen it before with online tutoring, just like they see it
COVID taught us
having
those
a,
things, right?
yeah, they had a value up until one point, and then they realized this wasn't helping them socialize. This wasn't helping them connect to the real world. It wasn't helping them feel as though they were valued, seen, or heard. And so I think that just underscores how important educators are in this moment, and that we're
Yeah.
experimenting with these tools. We are continuing to work well with students with it, and we're building a future with them. We're the architects of this new future with students, and AI is there as a tool, not as a replacement. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's that value. And to bring it back to kind of everything and that superpower that we have as teachers, um, I said it comes down to, being able to evaluate our students' work and all of that. But our superpower as teachers is our empathy and our mindfulness. And
absolutely,
being able to empathize with our students and their struggles is being able to put ourselves in those shoes and say, you know what, I understand you can't, but having the
mm-hmm.
perseverance and knowing how to get them to I can. And I think that AI opens up so many doors for us, whether it's differentiation or whether it's for us to come up with better, more engaging, more relevant lessons. Whether it's giving students the ability to generate things they couldn't generate before, just to see that they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
If a student can, with their ideas, just put their ideas down, and that turns into an essay, that validates their ideas, right?
Yeah,
So be it for the writing, but I want to validate my students' ideas, and that's really where it comes from. And I think that AI, as far as we talk about replacing us and all this technology, I think it gives our humanity back. It shifts the paradigm from the student or from the teacher being the judge of our students to being the cheerleader, to being the motivator, to being the experimenter with the student to help us, help them grow.
yeah. Thank you so much, Tim, for sharing all that. I couldn't agree more about that. Thank you again for your time. I know it's the end of the school year, and as we wrap things up, I want to celebrate all educators for making it through this year. I know some of us, like here in Northern Virginia right now, we still got 2 more weeks of school, but
Thank you.
educators are doing what? They're doing great. They're doing awesome. Special congratulations to all the schools that are wrapping things up for the end of the year. Huge, huge shout out to all of our seniors that have walked the stage and have graduated. And whether it's college, whether it's career, whether it's just like exploring the world that's out there, a huge congratulations to you guys. I'm very excited to see what the future holds for you all and to see you all build the world that you guys deserve. So thank you so much, Tim, for being here. Thank you everyone else that has joined us for XQ Live. Be sure to tune in for the next ones coming up. Follow us on social media, and you will be able to catch us on all future episodes. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good one.